Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and in today's video, we're going to talk about using CAD to design motorcycle parts for your own projects. So this video specifically, we're going to talk about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and also how we're doing it. We do have a follow-up video that'll come after this about the step-by-step process for designing the part we're talking about today. So if you want to go through that process, make sure you check out the second video, which will have a download link for the starting point with the scan mesh, as well as the scanned paper template. So in this video, what are we doing? Well, we're going to be designing a new engine cover for my 83 GPZ 750. Now, it's important to note that this cover is what's called a dry cover, meaning there's no oil behind it. If you were trying to create something like a clutch cover, or if your stator or charging system has oil behind it, that would be a slightly different process because we can't use things like scan spray on things that are covered in oil. But for the most part, you will be able to use the same techniques for pretty much whatever we're trying to do here. So now that we know what we're doing, let's talk about why we're doing it. So this bike is an 83 GPZ 750. I've had it since 1999. I began modifying it pretty soon after I got hit by a car on it. So with that, I started turning it into a street fighter. Took the fairing off, put dual headlights on, and then probably a year or so later, I started modifying the suspension and the chassis and doing all sorts of different things. So this bike has an 89 GSXR 750 front end. This is what's called a conventional fork because the portion that's clamped into the triple clamps is stationary and it's the inside of the tube, and the bottom portions are larger. Most bikes now have upside down forks where the larger portion is thicker, and it basically adds more rigidity. However, if you know anything about these bikes, back in the 80s, they were called the Flexi Flyers because the chassis actually twists quite a bit. So putting a stiffer front end on this bike was not an option, at least for the current chassis that I have. The rear end is a 95 GSXR 750, and that again is braced and it is stiffer, so it does add to the chassis flexing. I made some custom linkage, and overall what ended up happening is the front end dropped 2 inches, giving me about a rake of 23 degrees and a trail of about 3 inches. And the way I designed the linkage in the rear, I actually raised the rear end up. Now when I did this, I went through chassis design books and I figured out what I wanted to make it all work. And the result is a bike that handles pretty well. There is more weight bias on the front than there was originally. It feels pretty planted. It has smaller rims and wider tires. But the problem with that is the engines on these bikes, these old air-cooled bikes, are fairly wide. So with that, I need to work on narrowing the engine down. Now I have some pretty aggressive plans on how to do that, but what we're doing is we're taking a first jump at making a part that solves that problem. So oftentimes when we have big projects like this, and this one I've been designing since the 90s basically, it can be hard when that project list becomes so big that you don't want to start any part of it. Now this bike I started designing for actually racing in the vintage series in Wira here on the East Coast. And what ended up happening is because I had modified the suspension, the wheels, the brakes, that alone kicked it out of the vintage class it was in and into one with like the first generation R1s. The other thing is at the time I had a fuel injection throttle body, a Mega Squirt, actually the bigger one, not the Micro Squirt, and a turbo kit that I was building for this, and that kicked it completely out of vintage altogether. Even though Kawasaki made a turbo version of this bike in 84 and 85, which I have ridden, it wouldn't fit into a vintage class. So unfortunately, I ended up going a different direction. I started building supermotos and doing a little bit of racing there. And this bike is just kind of sat, which is sad because I love to ride it, but it just needs a lot. So we're gonna be doing a series on this bike, and we're gonna talk about each of the parts that need to be designed. The tail section, I've got a headlight that I'm doing. This gauge pod, which on this bike was a fuel gauge and some warning lights and things like that. I've got a different screen that I'm gonna be using here, a Nexion display, and I'm gonna be doing a GPS speedo. So we need to scan and modify this and design the electronics for it. I'm gonna do a triple clamp to raise the front end back up. I want to do a dry clutch, and I want to modify the engine some more, potentially finish the turbo kit, or put a 550 head on this thing to raise the compression and get 20 more horsepower out of it. So there are a lot of little things that need to be done, and there are a lot of big things like the exhaust, rear sets, because I've cut the rear most of the frame off, and I've got a 3/4 DOM tubing subframe under there right now. I need to just finish a lot. So as you can see, it's a big list. And that's just a small taste of the list. But again, starting small is a good way to get these projects rolling. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be using a couple of different techniques, talk about things like just tracing on paper, and we're gonna talk about 3D scanning and how we can use those tools to help design these parts. So the original case, because the front end dropped and is lower now and the rear end is higher or taller, what ends up happening is as the bike gets leaned over, the engine case is the first thing that touches. Now that's a bad situation because what ends up happening is it unloads the front end, you lose traction, and then you wash out. It's much better than getting high-sided, but still not fun to crash no matter what. So when I first started this, I ended up cutting one of the original covers and putting a little aluminum panel on it. I had planned to weld this. Never quite got that far with it, again, just because the project just fizzled out. But now that we've got better technology, we've got access to 3D printers and materials that'll work for in-use parts, it's a good time to talk about designing these parts. Now, I will say, full disclosure, I've actually redesigned the pickup holder and I can completely do away with this cover, but there's a lot more to that process. And ultimately what I'd love to do is shave this completely off the side of the case and do something else entirely different with the ignition pickup and the ECU and all that kind of stuff. Bit bigger of a project, so let's start small. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the different techniques and how we can make this happen. So about a year ago, I actually designed a cover that was a copy of the original, but it had the taper section on it that I wanted to do originally with the aluminum case. Now, I have crashed this bike before a couple times, unfortunately. I was hit by a car one time. Another time I low-sided, and I can tell you from experience that the original case doesn't protect anything. These things get destroyed, the stuff underneath gets destroyed, so having an aluminum case or something that seems protective doesn't really matter. So the idea is to use an end-use 3D printed part. This is going to be lighter, we can make some changes to the geometry pretty easily. And if the bike gets leaned over and it scrapes, it's going to be sacrificial. It'll sort of just wash away on the pavement, and hopefully it won't unload the front end, at least until the entire engine can be narrowed down and maybe even raised up a little bit in the chassis. So with all that said, how do we go about this? Well, the way that I did the original one was pretty straightforward and something that you can do with no special tools. So what we do is we take the original case and we trace it on a piece of paper. That gets us pretty close, but we still do need to take some manual measurements. We need to understand things like the bolt diameters, get a good idea of where those bolts are located in space, just to double check ourselves. And we also need to measure how high we need to make our parts. So at the most basic level, that's how you can get started. And in our video, we're going to be using that section of using a sort of a scanned piece of paper into the computer as the starting point for our design. That's something that I've been doing for 20, 30 years, and it does work pretty well. Since we have access to better technology, what I did in this case was I ended up using some vanishing scan spray from RevoPoint and a RevoPoint Morocco to scan the area of the case, the mounting surface, as well as the electronics that go inside it. So I don't really need a high detailed scan. I can spend a minute or two getting this data, and then I have something to put into the computer. Once it's in the computer, if you have a program like Quick Surface, you can align the scan. If you're just using RevoScan, one of the tricks I use is to make sure that the first frame that I scan is aligned both with our ground plane as well as forward and back as you're holding the scanner. And that will get you pretty close to having it aligned in 3D. You still need to move it to the origin, but for the most part, that'll at least get the orientation of the scan correct within a degree or two. So once we have that data in the computer, it doesn't matter if you're using Fusion or Plasticity or SolidWorks or whatever, you can bring all that data into those CAD programs. Now in Fusion, if you bring an image in, you can calibrate it to make sure it's the right size. You can do the same thing in SolidWorks. In Plasticity, however, the best option that I have is to draw a circle, the diameter of the part we're making, and then make sure that we scale our image to that size. Now in Fusion, we can insert a mesh pretty easily. In plasticity, we can do that as well. In SolidWorks, it's a little bit trickier. It doesn't deal very well with meshes unless you have something like a quick surface for SolidWorks. Then it makes the process quite a bit easier. However, in our case, it doesn't matter if you have access to a scan, if you're using an iPhone and LiDAR, for example, or if you're just using the paper method. Now, just keep in mind the paper method will probably need a little bit of trial and error. You may need to print a few of these things. Now, the design itself, as I mentioned, there is a video that goes through the process step by step, walking through designing this part in Fusion. The process is the same whether or not you're using any CAD software. Basically, you will just need to make a couple of different tweaks. For example, in Fusion, we can make an offset plane and sketch on it for our loft. But in plasticity, you would draw the circle on the top plane, and then you would just simply move the circle up to the height where you want the loft to go to. So some basic nuances like that, but for the most part, any of these CAD systems will work. The final part, the material, is probably the most critical thing. So what I have here is a PLA-CF. This is a hyper PLA material. I've also printed it in just a basic hyper PLA. I tend to use the hyper PLAs for my test parts. Now, mechanically, these are actually really strong. It would probably work as an end-use part, but the CF material actually is a little bit better surface finish and it's a little stronger. So the mechanical properties of that are much better. I would say that stick with a PLA material while you're doing your testing and your test fitting. And then if you are happy with your end result and you want a final part, then look into some other materials that'll fit your specific needs. Now, this doesn't have any oil or any sort of fluid or liquid behind it, so it's essentially just a dust cover. So with that, all I really need to worry about is the heat. Now, in this case, printing this is at about 230 Celsius. The engine temperature and the fact that it has airflow and the properties of this material, it should be just fine. Now, if it doesn't, again, it's just a dust cover. If something happens, it's not going to affect the actual ability for the machine to run, but it is something that we should consider. So an ABS material, a PETG material, or some of the other different filaments that you can get will surely find something that works in a higher temperature application. Again, it is a sacrificial part, meaning that I wanted to get it as narrow or as tight as possible to the bike. But ultimately, if it leans over and it drags on the ground, the idea or the hope here is that it'll just wear away like a knee slider or pucks on boots or on engine cases and things like that. So it's essentially just going to be a slider part that is sacrificial in itself. Now, the material price is pretty low. I mean, you're talking about $20 for a spool, and I could probably print about 50 of these things on a spool. So we're talking a couple of dollars at most to print one of these covers. So in the long run, that's a pretty good deal. The original cover when I bought this years ago was $15 or $20. Probably quite a bit more if you can even find them now. But for the most part, we don't need to go down the route of something like this cast aluminum cover. If you do want to go that direction, I did quote this out with PCBWay, who recently we did a CNC project with, and it was roughly about $100 to get this machined out of 6061 and have it coated in black, either a powder coat or an anodized finish. So that is an option if you want to go that route. And in the video where we designed this part, I talk about some things that we would want to change if we were going the route of doing this as a CNC part as opposed to a 3D printed part. So if you'd like to see more videos like this on the parts that we're going to be designing and building for this bike, please leave a comment and let me know. I'm happy to do the step-by-step walkthroughs of each part. And I'm also happy to do these overview videos talking about the part, why we're doing it, and some of the considerations that we have. Now, at the end of the day, there are dozens of parts that need to be designed for this bike. Several CNC machined parts, several plastic parts, some electronics. It's going to be quite a bit of time to make that happen. So it would be helpful to know if you do enjoy this kind of content or if you want to see something different. Now, I do have other bikes that are going to be projects as well as this car that I really need to finish. So if you want to see more of this kind of content or you enjoy the how-to videos, make sure that you do subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.